Good morning, everybody. I was just telling Russ, I kind of feel like I'm in a Baptist church this morning. Nobody wanted to sit on the front row, so that's okay, too. We do a lot of work with churches. Mike, I want to thank you and the Chamber for letting us be here this morning. Russ, appreciate you partnering with us on this event today. And obviously, Jay, it's good to have the opportunity to work with you and look forward to hearing your talk this morning. It's always an honor to represent Studio 4 Design as the company president. And I'm proud to have my partners, Greg Terry, Mike Keller, and Kevin Deagle are scattered around here somewhere this morning. And it's good to have these guys here in support of us today, too. This is our 14th year as an architecture firm in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we're excited about this year. 2015 was a record year for us, and in part with working with the people like Russ Watkins and partners, and with Jay and Local Motors. Those kinds of projects are things that just really excite us, and we're glad to be a part of those, and we're looking forward to this year. We're excited to be part of this business community, and also want to just thank everybody in this room for your contributions to the community. Hopefully you guys are doing well in your respective organizations, and some of you guys are our friends and partners, and we've worked together in the past, and hopefully you guys are having as good a start to year 2016 as we have. We're also grateful, Jay, that you chose Local Motors is to be a part of this community. I was just saying, I live out in Hardin Valley right next to the project that I did, so I get to wake up every morning and I can see it just across the ridge, and it's a very nice feeling to be able to walk out the door and see something that you're part of, and had the opportunity to work for such an innovative and exciting company as Local Motors, and I'm excited for what Jay is going to share with us today. Typically when we stand before you, and we've done this several times, we're showing something that we've done for the University of Tennessee, and while we're very excited, Dr. Pietro, it's good to see you here today as well. We're excited to have the opportunity to have that relationship with UT and do a lot of work. We also do a lot of other things besides higher education, and industrial happens to be one of the areas that in the last 5 years we've had the opportunity to do over $50 million worth of work in the industrial sector. And so it was very exciting to have the opportunity to be a part of this project with Local Motors. You can see some pictures of the building over there. And that's just an area that we chose to be a part of. We know that industry is what drives innovation in our country, and those kinds of projects excite us, and we're always proud and honored to be a part of those kinds of things. So we just thank you guys again for having Jay and Russ for the opportunity to be a part of the project. And at this time, I'd like to also ask you guys, this is our big deal for us for this year. It's our 14th anniversary in May, and 4 is kind of a big number for us. We like to celebrate anything that has the number 4 in it for obvious reasons. But this is our 14th anniversary. We've just launched a brand new website. I'd encourage you guys to go to studio4design.com, check it out. You'll see a picture of Local Motors and some of the other things that we do. And also we'd ask you to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We've always got some cool stuff going on there. So at this time I want to introduce Russ Watkins with Partners to introduce our speaker this morning. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I was threatened actually earlier by Jay to keep this short, but it's not. It really can't be short. Jay is such an amazing guy, and when he begins to speak, what you're going to learn is that he is not just passionate, but he's also incredibly intelligent, and I think that sometimes has to go hand in hand, but with Jay's case, it very much so does. So I want to just, and I'm now wearing glasses, so sorry, I have to read with glasses. So I have the privilege this morning of introducing our featured speaker, Jay Rogers, who's president, CEO, and co-founder of Local Motors. Local Motors is a next-generation U.S.-based car company that is changing the way cars are designed, built, and owned. A car guy through and through, Jay grew up a student of the industry. His grandfather owned the legendary Indian Motorcycle Company and was the first Cummins engine distributor in the United States. It was Jay's family and personal passions that inspired the most ambitious plan behind Local Motors, to create an open source community that works together to design and develop exciting, efficient vehicles and builds them locally in a sustainable manner with customer participation. Local Motors is home to more than 60,000 car design concepts, 45,000 community members, over 90 full-time employees across 4 locations in the United States and Europe. 4 production vehicle models and hundreds of smaller vehicle innovations sold in its retail stores. And if you didn't notice on the way up this morning, they have a retail store just down below us. Just had a kind of a rebranding, and the grand opening again, Jay, is in May. It's in May. I urge you to go visit that place. It's a fantastic place just to see what's happening with this company. Most recently, Local Motors unveiled the Stratty, the world's first 3D printed vehicle. Jay is a graduate of Princeton University's Woodrow Wilson School of Public International Affairs and holds an MBA from Harvard Business School as a Baker Scholar. His eclectic background also includes 6 years as an infantry company commander in the United States Marine Corps. Jay lives here in Knoxville with his wife and 4 boys. So please join me in welcoming Jay Rogers.
Good morning. Good morning. It's an early morning, and so let's see if we can go free and easy a little bit here. So what a joy it is to talk to close friends, partners, and thank you so much, Stacy. Thank you, Studio 4. Thank you, Russ. Literally, we couldn't have done it without you in every way. And I have had the luxury and the honor of setting up Local Motors facilities now in Massachusetts, in Phoenix, in Maryland, and now in Berlin as our latest one. And by far, without question, the easiest and the best experience has been here. No doubt. And so I am super proud to be part of this community, to be able to do business with people like you, to do business with the Chamber. Rhonda, it's been great. Dr. DiPietro, everything we've had with the school has been fantastic. And then Pellissippi State being our new neighbor, thank you so much for your welcome. And just everyone who has been here that I've had the opportunity to interact with. You know, we wouldn't be here for so many of you. Jesse, your work, both at the Chamber and then at the lab, goes without saying. So thank yous all around. Doug, also, thank you so much for your help. So Local Motors, a lot of you know a lot about us, and then some of you maybe know little, so we'll try to jazz it up this morning to really make it a little bit easier to fight the morning hour. So we do have a store downstairs, so you have an opportunity to go down and check it out. I would. It tells you a lot about what we do at Local Motors, because we're changing a lot of things, and it's easier to see it in the flesh. So this is really where I like to think about, this is where I go to bed at night thinking about things. We don't use these anymore, right? But over 100 years, we've done this. And think about the difference between that. It's really instructional when you think about what we do at Local Motors. Like, if you catch this, it's very easy to understand what we do, because there's a massive difference between the number of sensors and the amount of compute power and the cost and all of the things. But really what's not shown there is how it's designed and how it's made. The phone that's on the left is a very different kettle of fish, so to speak, than the phone that's on the right. Really, the thing on the right, we don't even call a phone anymore. I mean, how many of you don't even like to take calls on? You'd rather text. So I think it's fascinating. What I also think is fascinating is what has happened over the same period of time. That's not as fascinating. And it's not as different. And it's really not that much of a change. Henry Ford made the one on the left with Frederick Taylor, and pretty much everybody who followed what Henry Ford did made the thing on the right. And so the bottom line is we haven't done enough to change where we are. And it is true, I spent my time in the Marine Corps in a lot of places where we fight to keep stability or do peacekeeping operations to keep stability in oil-rich nations of the world. And if you've ever spent time in an oligarchy and you really see what happens over time, all the fuel that you and I and we buy to stick in our vehicles comes from places that don't have as much as we have spread out by a lot of people. And that's really dispiriting to be part of, and I wanted to do something about it. And I didn't want to do something about it by continuing to be a Marine, though it was awesome. I enjoyed doing it. I wanted to do something about it because I was curious, and you know, there's no way to top the introductions that were made. They're very, very much far too kind. I failed at tons of things at Princeton, and I failed at tons of things at Harvard, but what I definitely was stupid enough to think that I could start a car company while I was in the Marine Corps. And so, because if I wasn't, I wouldn't have done it. And so, but I am happy to be here today saying that so far it's working out. So this was what we came into. And all of us think we know what car manufacturing is about. My mother's the worst offender of this, okay? And so we just think, it is so ingrained in our soul to think that when you've made it, you can turn the button on at a factory and mass manufacturing will kick out a million of whatever it is that you need. That's just how things are made. But that is an improper equation for the world that we live in today. Frederick Taylor said to Henry Ford, "Henry, stop messing around with that thing and let's put it on a line and make 15 million of them in the next 10 years. Ford wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for Taylor. But Taylor got him to buy off on a construct that he had no idea what it was going to do to our country. It was going to create unions, it was going to destroy innovation, and it was going to make it very difficult for us to have STEM education be successful in this country. But nobody was saying that to him. Not even Ford could convince Taylor that that was what was going to happen. But the reason why is we needed to put cars in everyone's garage. And so he was famous for many quotes, but one of them was, "You can have any car you want as long as it's black." because he needed to put a car in everybody's garage. There was no Tim Berners-Lee. There was no internet. There was no Fred Smith and FedEx. There was no ability to have intellectual property that was protected for each individual student and contributor that's out there. None of that existed. So Frederick Taylor won, and he said, Henry Ford, we're not going to be an innovative company, we're going to be a production company. Peter Drucker was famous for saying the big difference between leadership and management is that leadership picks the mountain you're going to climb, and management makes sure that you climb it well. Without a leader, you could be climbing the wrong mountain and doing a great job of it. It just so happened that Henry Ford and Frederick Taylor figured out how to lead and manage in the beginning of the century, but the model that they created is not befitting for what we need today. Full stop. Full stop. This was what my grandfather did before he bought the Indian Motorcycle Company. He wanted to see what was possible. He read a Time magazine about Boss Kettering at GM, who was thinking about diesel power. And there had been big motors that were going in boats. But he said the molecule is 30% more efficient in terms of generating power per weight of molecule. And so he said, I want to put it in a car because it'll be great. No concept of particulate emissions at the time. It just wasn't interesting. It wasn't even thought about. So he was very proud to be standing there taking that picture, and his picture is in the reflection for taking that picture. And they put the first diesel engine, Cummins, he was a distributor for Cummins, in Auburn. He was constantly wanting to innovate, which is the reason why he bought Indian. Now, it didn't work out for him at Indian. It did work out at the beginning very much, and then later on, he ran out of money buying a new factory. In fact, Russ, Stacy, take a listen on this one. He bought a new factory because he was given the factory. And they said, come to Springfield, Massachusetts, take over this post-war Rolls-Royce factory, and it'll be great. And he took it on, but he didn't know what he needed to build. So he started in on the new Chief, a 1,000cc motorcycle, square cylinder. For those of you that know cylinders, they're not actually square, but the bore and the stroke ratio were the same, and it turned out that the tide had turned against him, and the small displacement cafe racers from the UK were coming in strong, and Japan right behind that. And he had already spent all of his money on making these big Marlon Brando type motorcycles. Wrong product, wrong time. It's like making SUVs in the middle of a fuel crisis. And so, didn't work for him. But he wanted to be an innovator. He ended up landing in cement and steel and starting one of the largest cement and steel companies in the country called Texas Industries. So he didn't do what he wanted to in automotive, but he did get his innovation flair out working on cement and steel, lightweight aggregates, sheet piling, a lot of things. He was a manufacturer at heart, which is one of the reasons why I'm here in Tennessee right now, because manufacturing, to me, is where it's at. Maybe for the next 100 years. We've had a love affair with software for 25 years, but now it's time to actually add the hard to the soft in order to be able to make it come together. And that's not just a flip line, we're really talking about it. I dream of making complex cyber mechanical devices like this. When I was a kid growing up, I was super passionate about just putting things together. I was an early maker. I loved woodworking. It was fascinating to me. I tore apart my first Porsche 356A with a mentor that I had, and learned what a pancake engine was and what air cooling a motor was and how it worked. And you learn about thermodynamics through actually, for me, putting my hands on something. So I got in trouble a lot of times for taking apart the phone at home. That wasn't a good thing. Can't figure out how to get the rotary dial back together. But I was passionate about making. But what was frustrating to me early on at an early age is that I could imagine what I wanted to make, but there were so many steps between imagining it on a Sunday afternoon and actually making it real. But today, not so much. 5 years ago, yes, it was still like that. But today, not so much. You can draw pictures like that, and you can make them come out like this. Because the digital thread is way more robust. Just in the last 5 years, we've gone through something that's really epic in the last 5 years in terms of design. Something that has gone from Web 1.0 to Web 2.0 to cloud infrastructure to a lot more speed, and then also an intellectual property change where people are sharing more. Driven definitely by most of the people that are not in this room. So the millennial generation is really the one that has a casual respect for authority. They're really happy to share. They're happy to co-opete. They want to cooperate and they want to compete. They want to have fun while they're doing it, and they respect authority, but it's something where they want to make their own rules about it. So this was the first vehicle that we did, the Rally Fighter. The Rally Fighter wasn't digitally manufactured. It was as close as we could get at the time. We started 6 years ago on this project. We wanted to show we could put a car on the highway. Mayor was pointing out to me, what do you do with all those regulators? And that is a big question. If you're wondering that, we can talk about that. I wouldn't be able to be in business if I didn't believe that regulation was not evil. Regulation isn't evil. Every developed economy in the world has regulators. We have taxes, we pay for them because we don't want people running hog wild with our public trust. But on the other hand, they usually follow the market instead of lead it. And so as things speed up, we have an opportunity to bring regulators along with us. And the face of a regulator has changed also in the last 20 years. Now they typically come from industry and go into regulation and then go back to industry, so they know a lot more. So we'll talk about that. The other thing that's happened is, how many people here have built a Lego in the last month? Hands, please. So hold them up high, proud. That's a lot. More than have used the rotary phone that we had at the beginning, okay? So it's incredible because 10 years ago, Lego was about out of business. And they're still making money on the thing that really put them into business, which is the blocks. And if you have kids or grandkids or nieces and nephews that play Minecraft, you understand that the anthropomorphic nature of a human face is not that interesting to a kid because it's more interesting in a block. I have 4 kids that prove that every day, and it's both virtual and physical. They like to play Lego, and they like to play Minecraft. They're putting things together virtually, and then when they're done with that, they go and put things together physically, and it's a totally different side of their brain. And what interests them about doing that, having just been to Legoland for like my 5th time, what interests them about doing that is essentially interesting to us at Local Motors. So making it simple to design is something that is a thread. We really see the world in 2 groups to make our business, and the microfactory that Stacy and Russ have built for us is all about bringing those 2 groups together. We call it Customer 2.0. On the right, my right, yes, on your left, is bringing together a crowd of people to help us figure out answers to things that we need, and on the left, your right, is the ability to be able to make it locally. Make it locally. That's not just a fancy word. There's a reason for it. Customer 2.0 is really just a natural evolution for where we've been going with customers. Customers, we're all customers, are lazy. We say, like, oh, I need something right now, and Amazon's the worst at it. You know, I mean, it's like, I order it right now, and it's going to be at my door tomorrow, and in some cities, today, right now. But then when you start to realize that the choice isn't quite what you wanted, when was the last time that you got in your car, and if you really thought about it, the corporate average fuel economy goes up super slow every year. If you really thought about it, are cars getting lighter? No, they're getting heavier. And so we're not really changing them, but you don't get a voice in that. You don't really get to go to the dealership and say, hey, could you make me a different one? How about one that flies? I mean, the last time I went to a car dealership, it was a miserable experience. And I'm sorry if there are any car dealers in here, but it is a truth. It is a truth that if you've shopped at a Tesla store, you notice a difference. One of the differences you notice is that people are super passionate about the technology that's there. Most car dealerships you go in today, the customer is way more educated by the time they get in front of the person that's there, because they can research it on the internet. And it's embarrassing when you're selling something and your customer knows more about it than you do. Also, dealers have been sold a raw deal. Back at the beginning, in order to distribute a ton of cars, dealers needed to be there and they were vitally important. But today, you compete dealers like crazy as a customer, and this is where customers get really pernicious because they go out and they say, I want a BMW 750, but I'm not going to pay $1 over what I have to for that because there are 7 dealers that I can get to, and when I go online, there are 40 dealers that I can get to, and I will compete each one of them to death to get the best price on that car, and BMW loses and the dealers lose every time. That's not how we innovate in this country, but it is what we have instantiated in law. So Customer 2.0 is changing that and saying, I want something different, and I'm going to see that it happens, and if it happens, then I'm going to buy it. So these are some of the tools that allow them to be able to come out. Words that didn't exist really 6 years ago. Micro-production, crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, direct digital manufacturing, those kinds of things, remuneration online, that's like Web 3.0. Web 1.0 was just getting information on the web. Web 2.0 was giving back your information on the web. Web 3.0 is doing commerce in a very, a very simple way, chunked up into little pieces. So we believe in selling products developed locally with our community. Lots of interesting products. Local Motors does not do everything. And so one of the most important things is what we don't do. So we don't build firearms, and we don't work on carpets, and we don't build toilets, and there are so many products we don't work on. We are focused on vehicles, but it's not just four-wheel cars. I like drones. We just signed up a major partner in Airbus, and in our Berlin lab, we're building drones with Airbus. That's a vehicle, and a super interesting one. So vehicles are what we're passionate about, and all the stuff that goes into them. So community members earn royalties. 5 years ago, I was interested in discussing whether it's a good idea to be able to give our community members royalties. Now, it's a boring conversation, because the bottom line is people contribute without money. That's just a fact. How many people in here have used Wikipedia? Oh, stop. How many people in here have not used Wikipedia? Raise your hand. Nobody. Not a single dollar is paid for people who contribute to Wikipedia. But by any count, they can remake the Oxford English Dictionary in about 85 days. Super amazing that people would do that. And Jimmy Wales, who founded Wikipedia, would say, if you don't understand why people contribute without being paid for it, then you probably shouldn't even use Wikipedia. And so that's a super interesting thing for me to think about. So why do we pay royalties to our community members? When you're a for-profit entity doing these kinds of things, I think it's kind of table stakes. It's that simple. If you walk into a cocktail party and you start talking about yourself only, what are people going to say about you? That person's sort of rude, and all they're doing is talking about themselves. That's kind of how I feel right now. I'm just talking about what we do. So please forgive me. I'm that rude guy at the cocktail party. But there's a point, and the point is that table stakes. If you're a C Corp in this age of millennials and you're asking for help, you better give back. And in fact, you better give back before you get the first time. That's the way that it works. Give to get, not get to give. So give to get is really part of that ethos. And the money is a sideshow. It's important, but it's a sideshow. So we commercialize products faster at less cost. These three graphs really take Local Motors against the Chevy Volt, the Fisker Karma, which isn't in business anymore, and the Tesla Roadster. And it says we do things faster because we put less capital to work, and we have more people that are involved. We do things faster. Really, we build the 25th car. So this is measuring the 25th car out the door, not the first. Faster because of less capital and because of more people. Now, it's kind of counterintuitive. How can you go faster when you put less capital to work? But the reason is there's a fourth graph, which we don't put up, and I leave it to the end. It's because we make fewer vehicles in each lot. And that's what Henry Ford wasn't able to do. But if you can do things at less CapEx, and you can make fewer vehicles in each lot, then you have more chances to find what's going to be successful. You have more chances to find what's going to be successful. It's what every company that makes complex cyber-mechanical devices would want to do. But we get lost in why we've built big factories, and we're not nimble at the ability to be able to chunk things out quickly to try. But if you really focus on that, then you can get through more failures to get to success. Tom Watson was famous for saying at IBM, success lies at the other side of failure. If you really believe that, then you have to be willing to accept failure. And I have heard from the biggest CEOs in America that say, I have a culture where publicly I'm supposed to say failure is okay in my company, but it's totally not. Like, you'll never get promoted if you fail on the launch of a product. That's not right. And we know it. But if you have a culture like that, then you're killing innovation within the company. So building this business from the ground up has been realizing that and been getting to a point where you can accept failure in order to find success on the other side. So faster to get to the successes, putting less capital on each one, and putting more people on it to find it, but doing smaller lots of production. I'll give you something to think about. Anybody here ever cooked with a George Foreman grill? Lots. Mandatory for most men. Okay? Because it allows grilling to come inside. Okay? And so a George Foreman grill, maybe one of the vestiges, I'm going to throw something out there. 15 million grills, like 15 million Model Ts, made George Foreman very famous, maybe even more than his fights with Muhammad Ali. But the interesting thing is that if you did it today, I don't know that he would be able to make 15 million grills, because I think by the time he got 50,000 out, there would be something new that would be competing it. Just in the last 15 years, that's happened. MakerBot, 3D printer, small 3D printers. They have a statistic now, they're owned by Stratasys, that says 40% of the designs that are being printed are being redesigned before the print has been finished. 40% of their prints are being redesigned before the print has been finished. How do you get to 15 million when you're that inquisitive about making something better? I think that we're entering an age where the mass economy of scale is being heavily challenged. You'll be able to point out some products that need to be ka-chunked in the million per year, but I think when factories get more nimble and customers have more of a voice, we in business have to get on a faster treadmill to answer what they need, or we go out of business. So, 48 months for a Tesla right now. That's too slow. The last vehicle that we did, the Swim, was 1.5 months. 1.5 months. That vehicle's in Washington, D.C. right now, and it was just up on Capitol Hill. The digital design came in at the beginning of August, and at the middle of September, I was driving it on the highway in Arizona at 90 miles an hour, and it's an all EV, and it is fully 3D printed. Now, you can sit back and you can say, yeah, but it wasn't crash tested, but we're crash testing it right now. And we're not just crash testing that vehicle, we're testing every other kind of vehicle that we can print in order to be able to get there. I just gave a talk yesterday down in Chattanooga with Tecmer, our partners in polymer modification, and the difference between working in steel and working in polymers is the difference between having a choice of about 10 things you can use and having a choice of like 10,000 things that you can use. So being able to test more things and having a material that allows you to mix it up a lot, literally, is one of the things that gets us to be faster. So this is it right here. If you're wondering what we do, make vehicles fast and find the ones that people want. So that was the world's first co-created car, and the designer up in the upper left, Sang-Ho Kim. This was the next one we did, a military vehicle near and dear to my heart with the designer in the upper left, Victor Garcia. And then this is the first 3D printed car. So you can try it here just to play the video, because it's always fun to watch. Run, 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 run. Here we go, 1 second. I won't go too fast. I will go back. Okay. So. No sound, but it's okay. Sound from my computer. Pictures taken at the Oak Ridge National Lab Manufacturing Demonstration Facility right here in Tennessee, and some taken on the floor of the IMTS show in Chicago, where we printed it for the first time. So this car is sitting downstairs in the store right now. And we redesigned it about 3 months after we did this and printed a different version when we went to Detroit for the North American International Auto Show. And then the epic journey really started, because after getting that done, now it's about getting it homologated to get it on the road. So there's the designer in the upper left, Michele Anoe, who is the designer of the Strati, and you can see that car downstairs. And we printed a bunch of different versions of it. And really what it's about is simplicity. We talked about this at the beginning, but really what we're looking to do is make it as simple as possible, because the moonshot here for these vehicles is to really get to a cradle-to-cradle vehicle. We don't want to introduce new materials into the environment that we can't take back and use. My vision is much like Nike's vision today, which is I don't want to sell you a shoe, I don't want to sell you a car, I want to lease you a polymer. That's what I want to do. I want to lease you a polymer. I want to put you on a hardware upgrade program. Because if we can move things that fast and we can change things, what if I can give you a new battery technology every 6 months? I want to change the paradigm that when you drive off the lot, the car depreciates. That's that sinking feeling that everyone has. Don't buy new, the car depreciates totally. Today, you don't buy your cell phone. You talk about it like it's your cell phone, but it's not your cell phone. It's leased to you by the people that put you on a plan, and they pay for part of it. Same thing with a vehicle. Cell phones upgrade pretty quickly. Your apps upgrade for about 1.5 years, and then you trade in the hardware and you get the new one with the new sensors and the new hardware. Same thing should happen with a car, but it should be more responsible. If you've ever spoken to the people at Jabal or some of the people at Foxconn, they do not design for disassembly. So DFD is not part of their deal. And that's hard too, because they're making them in Shenzhen and they're sending them to Knoxville. But when you make a car locally, you have the opportunity to disassemble it. I learned that from my grandfather. One of the first things that I learned is when he created the steel company, the way they created it was they created it by taking in cars, a large part of their scrap steel, and turning it into the steel that they were making. But one of their biggest costs was getting those cars ready for disassembly. It's not easy. It's not recyclable. But if you design for disassembly, you can make that happen. But the vehicles have to be simple. And we were shooting for 50 parts in this first car, 50. So keeping it simple. There's the swim and the designer up in the left-hand side, Kevin Lowe. You notice it's always with a person, because that's what our community means to us. It's not Jay Rogers. It's not the people that work for Local Motors with a paycheck. It's the people that come in the community because they get passionate about what they're doing. So configurability of the car is what we're going for. You could call it modular. In many ways, that's exactly what it is, but modularity is a difficult word for lots of reasons. This is the next one that's going to come out for us. So this vehicle is being debuted at Hannover Messe in April 25th with President Obama and Chancellor Merkel. So we're going to get a big splash about that. And then we will show this first vehicle, which is called the Edgar, again, designed by a designer, Edgar Sarmiento. And the Edgar is going to debut in National Harbor. And it is an 8-person autonomous shuttle. So it runs without a driver. It's a low-speed electric vehicle. And it's super cool. And it's bringing together a lot of the trends. Again, if you can move quickly, you don't get stuck on the Strati, you don't get stuck on the Swim, you don't get stuck on the Rally Fighter, you don't get stuck on the Verado. You move to the things that work. And I'm not afraid to move through failures in order to be able to get there. This might be the most exciting product that we ever do. Because what it really does is it answers a call for what Uber is not doing. It's changing the form factor of what a vehicle is. I like to use like a food analogy when I think about Uber. For those of you that are familiar going to Manhattan, you realize when you really want to admit it, that Uber has not made Manhattan anything other than harder to get across town. Because all these black cars are called right to the place where everybody wants to go. And getting across town in Manhattan is super hard. But the reason why I use a food analogy is because it's like, 4 kids, so I think about this a lot. It's like asking you to eat your dessert before you really have to eat the protein. Uber is the dessert before you have to eat the protein. It's saying, I can make it easier to call the 300 million cars that are in the United States because I'm just putting it on your cell phone to call it. But I didn't make the car smarter. I didn't make the car smaller. I didn't make it more recyclable. All of that stuff is the protein that we need to eat because we have to figure out how to make those vehicles. Certainly having Uber is not going to make a car autonomous. But sure as death and taxes, I believe that in your lifetime, very quickly, you will not be driving cars. Because if you've ever been in a vehicle that drives itself, you realize that just like the phones that you have, machines don't make as many mistakes as we distracted humans do. There isn't a person in here that is not guilty of driving distracted, and many of us heavily. We're tired, we're thinking about something else, we're angry, we're happy, we're texting, we're talking to someone in the car. We are super bad drivers. Machines aren't super bad drivers, and once insurance companies get wind of what an autonomous car can do, they're not going to let you drive a car on many roads. You laugh, that's exactly what's going to happen. It's exactly what's going to happen. And so if you read our blog, you'll see we are deep into talking about what the future of autonomous vehicles mean to you and me, because it will change. You'll be able to dress in the car. You're going to be able to get more work done. It will be a wonderful thing. If you opine for driving a vehicle like I do, where you like that, you're going to be able to have that too. But it's the same kind of thing. If you opine for riding a horse and buggy at a time when you can get around on a car, you can have that too. The bottom line is you shouldn't be thinking of it as antiquated. It's just a parade of progress in technology. So those things are happening, and the Edgar is part of that. We couldn't do it without great materials, and that certainly is true, and that's one of the wonderful things about being here in East Tennessee is there are a lot of good material companies that are here. BASF, Tecmer, a lot of companies that are around. So direct digital manufacturing is about doing things that can be scaled up big or small. You're just changing the factor on the print size. And so the ability to be able to engage kids in it, just like the Lego, is super important. And doing it out of microfactories is really, should be something like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I often think that Roald Dahl was way ahead of his time. He predicted something that Adidas just came out and said yesterday in a big press release. They're starting this thing called run bases because they've come up with this idea that if they put microfactories around, it would be super interesting for people to see how a shoe is made and give feedback. And they're going to make an open community called open source around it. Good work, Adidas, because Roald Dahl predicted it. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I want to go see the factory. It's not the chocolate bar that I'm interested in. And we do believe a lot in industrial tourism. So Stacy, you said it. Hopefully I can get you to change it a little bit. It's not just an industrial place. It's an industrial tourist destination. It's about having fun and learning when you're going to see something being made and then buying the thing there. And that's something that we've had some trouble with. When I sat down and concepted Local Motors back in 2004, I was so enamored of factories that I called it microfactories. And it was taken from two professors, INSEAD and Cardiff University, that had come up with this idea of a microfactory retail point, a super bad word, the hard to say, MFRP. And so bottom line was, I just said factories are cool. They were cool for Charlie. And so wouldn't it be great if we call these things microfactories? Turns out when you go to municipalities, a lot of people are like, I don't want a factory. Can we do something better, like a Starbucks? And so microfactories are a little interesting, and I think the jury's out as to whether it's the right name for what we're doing. But it is touristic, and it is a place to buy things, and it is a place to go and design, and it's a place to go and think about what you're doing in addition to a factory. So this is where we are out at Pellissippi Parkway, and I think you all can vouch for the fact that, you know, bust and tail to be able to get out there. Month 1, it looked like that. Month 5, it looked like that. Incredible. Value engineering in this building, the design that went into it, I really honestly can say that though it will be incremented upon and we'll build the better one next time and the better one next time, that this was a huge step forward for us. 4 spaces inside it, very open, very configurable, and very easy to build all kinds of different vehicles. This should be capable of between 2,400 and 3,000 units of production per year. Oh, that's super exciting. And this is Customer 2.0. The orange line at the top are our first-time buyers and our second-time buyers and our customers. And the blue line is the other half of the Customer 2.0 equation, which is the people who come in and have ideas. And this is why we call it industrial tourism, because you might come in to buy something, or when you walk through the door, you might be wearing a blue shirt underneath your outfit, your Superman outfit, and you might be somebody who's coming in to give us an idea. So the equation is pretty simple. Either you come in with money and leave with a product, or you come with an idea and you leave with money. That's the equation of the Customer 2.0. So the labs empower young and old, military and not, women and men, everybody who's interested in some part. And we design, some people will say, well, how many people can design a whole vehicle? We don't do that because most people can't. But when you say a vehicle is made up of powertrain and vehicle dynamics and materials and interiors and electronics and software, and those are the major swim lanes that make up a vehicle, then you can really start talking to people who are like, oh, I like electronics, or I like software, or I like materials, or I like vehicle dynamics. Then you can all do it. So we at the company act like global project managers. We make big statements like John F. Kennedy made, like, we're going to put a man on the moon. He didn't say, I need this much thrust in order to have an escape velocity in order to be able to, because he would have lost everybody in that discussion. He just said, I'm going to put a man on the moon. And then he got a lot of people behind doing that. And that's happened time and time and time again for challenges that are out there. We're doing the same thing. We're throwing out big challenges and we're saying, can you help us with these individual parts? So hackathons are part of what we do, getting people to come in and contribute. So, and then shopping locally. So this is pictures from downstairs. Very exciting for us to be able to see it. And the focus of that retail is really to let you know that not only can the things be sold on the inside, but they were made here. So one of the cool things is the videos that you see in that wall, they're going to highlight. So we're working on a new one right now. So this is just for you all here in this room to know. In about a month, you'll see a new video that's going to show up that's really going to localize the store and say that the factory that made the things that are here is just 15, 20 minutes away on Pellissippi Parkway. That ought to blow the tourist minds that come through this market Square. We know they're people. We wouldn't be in Maryland right now at National Harbor if it wasn't for Market Square, because the person who was a buyer for the family that invested in Local Motors at National Harbor came to Market Square to see what innovative things were going on, and they were struck by Local Motors. Just wait till we have a video that says there's a micro factory down the road and you can go see it. There's no other city in the world that's going to be like that. It's totally awesome that it's happening here in Knoxville. So to close, that's really the world that I dream of. Not the big companies that are on the sign, but the little kid who's like, I want to be part of that. I want to be part of that. Eberhard von Kuhnheim, who really turned BMW around for the Quant family back in the late 70s, was famous for saying, I want to reach all the 13-year-olds to get them to aspire to buy a BMW 3 Series as a used car 10 years from now. your 13-year-old in 10 years is going to be able to have a used car, and he wanted them to buy a BMW 3 Series. And he did it. He was successful, and he turned that whole company around. Well, the world has changed, and the Eberhard von Kuhnheim of today is trying to reach people like this and letting them actually contribute to a vehicle in less than 10 years from the time that they're going along. They should be able to be 14 and giving ideas for what we could do. Because if they can make Lego blocks or they can make Minecraft work, they have something to contribute to what's going on. So that's the future, that's the way we see it, and we think it's super exciting. Maybe one last note that I will say here is this is something that we've done recently with another one of our university partners, the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And we've done partnerships, as mentioned, with UT, done partnerships with Fraunhofer University in Germany, and partnerships with tons of other research institutions, because what's happening at research institutions is changing also. And so Dr. Paul Lowe, in this particular case, had a robotics dream. He came from zero to hero in a very short period of time. His cousin was the #1 roboticist in one of the national universities in Korea. And he had come over to be a professor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And they had never entered the robotics competition before. And they took, in the DARPA robotics competition, they took, I think they took 3rd place. So it was pretty fascinating for them to do it. And so we tried a different hit at an autonomous vehicle here. We 3D printed a golf cart, and then we put the robot in the golf cart, and the robot drove the golf cart around. And that was super amazing for people to see. We debuted that at IBM Insight. So really making Paulo and his postdocs famous for what they were doing. And now, then we went to the University of Michigan, and they're using one of these vehicles, actually 2 of these vehicles, for their new driverless program that's going around their new park that's there. And they needed to put Velodyne sensors in the right place, and they needed the different payload, they needed to do things. And when you can change up a car super fast, then they don't have to spend time deconstructing the car in order to make their research go forward. So you're not taking like a Ford Fusion and trying to take away all the stuff that Ford was putting on there. You can just the facts, just what you need to do the research. So that's been super exciting. So transportation ecosystems made locally and designed by the world. Thank you very much. That's Local Motors. I know that some of you have to go. If anybody has a burning question, maybe take 2 questions before I leave, if there are any. Yes, sir.
How do you source your powertrain components? And you design the body around the powertrain, or the other way around?
Super good question, and I'm going to let you all in on a secret here, and you will be the first people to know it. I think last night we bought our first powertrain. And so we've been working on a deal for a long time, and what we want to do is be the first company that opens up a powertrain to the world. There isn't a car company in the world that releases their IP from a powertrain, and I think you're going to see that from us very soon. So prior to that, we were sourcing powertrains from manufacturers, and we will still do that, because there's some powertrains that we can't make. But my goal is to say, I remember I talked about those swim lanes that make up a vehicle. I would like to have an open project on each one of those swim lanes. We've got the vehicle structure that you asked, so yes, we print that and design it almost like a unitary structure around the vehicle. But if I could open up batteries, and if I could open up the motor, and I could open up the electronic architecture, and I can open up the software and the interior, I would do it across all of them. But now that we have our hands on a powertrain, that's going to be one of the first things, because, wow, powertrains are super exciting to people. And so it'll be an EV powertrain. That's where we're putting our focus on this next vehicle. I'm not a snob about internal combustion engines, that they're bad or good, but there's certain just fewer parts in an EV motor. And so the energy density is going up in batteries, and so it's more possible to afford them. And so I would like to say, when we started, we would take someone else's powertrain and we'd design the car around it. Right now we can play a little bit more with that in the near future. So that's super exciting. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How do you get around the dealer network problem? Tesla had a big problem with that. It's about to shut them down.
So the bow wave of Tesla has been super helpful in many ways. There are 4 states in the nation where you cannot sell direct. And it's interesting, when you go to Texas, you don't see a lot of Teslas. They're very, very powerful dealer laws, but it's really only 4 states right now that keep it from happening. And I think those states are just going to be under a massive amount of pressure. It's hypocrisy is really what it is. It's sort of a neat, interesting vignette. I happened to be at a wedding in California with a guy named Carl Sewell. And if you've ever lived in Dallas, you will know that there's Sewell Cadillac and Sewell Sewell Chevrolet and Sewell, all this kind of stuff. And Carl and his wife were sitting across from me at the dinner table. This is a true story. And his wife was talking to me about Tesla. And she was saying, aren't they neat cars? They're wonderful. And I'm thinking, I'm sitting here, he paid over $5 million in lobbying to keep Tesla from being able to be sold in Texas. He beat Elon Musk. And his wife is talking about how exciting the cars are. It was I was like, are you kidding me? That was a rare moment. And so in any case, it's going to change. It has to change. And so as a politician and as me as a taxpayer, I think it is utterly reprehensible that we stop innovation from happening based on laws. If you really want to go through why they were created, I'll just give a quick history of it. Dealerships were created because automakers needed to be able to get cars out in the world. And when they were super powerful, dealers needed to protect themselves from the big guys coming in and going around the franchise contracts that they had sold. So they created the NADA, the National Automotive Dealers Association. And the NADA at the beginning, just like all trade groups, was good at protecting the dealers. And it was necessary. But there were certain things that were put in place, lemon laws, where they said the reason why we need to be here is because we need to protect the customer against the big guy. So the dealer is going to protect you from having a lemon coming out. So it's instantiated a bunch of things that came along. We're in a totally different place. If you've ever seen the number of corporate jets big dealers like Roger Penske fly around in, they are the fat cats now. They have a lot more of the value chain that's going on. But the NADA is still very powerful, and they put up a massive fight to keep Tesla from being able to come into states and sell direct. And their defense was they're going to be lemons. They won't work because the company has a moral hazard for selling things directly. Well, if you've ever been in a Tesla, I don't think you can call them a lemon. And so that's the thing. We've got to stop that from happening. 4 states in the nation where you still can't do it. Yes, sir. Last one.
Jay, give everybody a timeline or path forward for the Knoxville microfactory. Like, where are you now? When will everybody will see grand opening? I know what's the timeline forward?
So we've got, I'll be very frank with you. I think it's probably going to be August or September when the factory opens. It'll be soft open, be well before that. But in terms of cutting ribbon, grand opening, and other things like that, the printers are slower to get than we want. And so it just takes time to get everything together. And so we've done a redesign on the area on the front, which we needed to do. And Russ and Stacy, there are no secrets here. We didn't have the front designed when we started building the building. And so, but that's the way we had to go because we needed to get it up. And so we didn't want to wait because there were lots of people saying, well, you'll never build a factory. And so the bottom line is we also won't stop. We're printing right now in the factory, and we're printing the Beta Mule for the first crash-tested car, and that Beta Mule is going into reliability testing at a facility out in Arizona called Exponent, which does a lot of crash certification and testing, and we're printing right here, and it's work right now. We had a trouble yesterday on printing something in Arizona. We have 3 printers right now, and we had a trouble printing on our Arizona printer, and so we just sent the file over to Tennessee, because we know we can ship it really easily. So we sent the file over to Tennessee, and we printed it 6 times. And so we're printing now, and so it's just a question of getting the printers in place, getting the space built out, and making sure that we have everything in place as we're going forward. So there's your timeline. Thank you all very much. You've been very patient this morning. It's a real pleasure.